Recovery Sort Of is a podcast where we discuss recovery topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The attitudes expressed are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised, there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature.
Welcome back. It's Recovery Sort Of. I'm Jason, a guy who does not speak very wisely.
And I'm Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
And we have Jenny today.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a person in long-term sobriety.
And we're going to talk about wise speech, which is an interesting concept that I have never heard of exactly. I have a feeling once we get into it, there's probably some 12-step equivalent-ish type thing. But I think it's interesting that there's this Buddhist concept and therefore a recovery Dharma concept of wise speech, and we don't know anything about it. So that's why Jenny's here. So maybe we just start there. What the hell is wise speech?
So when I was active in 12 steps, like when I did the 12 steps with a sponsor, she introduced me to the a speaking concept. It was, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said right now? Did you have that? Did you?
Yeah, I've heard that somewhere along the way. I don't know that any of my sponsors actually told me that, but I picked it up somewhere.
Yeah, and that's been a part of something I think I've picked up probably through Buddhist teachings and meditation. It's like I don't always need to just say whatever I think without thinking about what I'm going to say.
Okay. Yeah. And that was probably the first time I considered how, in recovery, how to treat speech. Maybe before that, though, do you guys remember the book, The Four Agreements? Did either of you read that one?
Never read that.
I have not read it. I actually read the dude's son's book.
Okay.
The 5 Levels of Attachment.
Oh, that does sound interesting. I'll have to check that one out. The Four Agreements. I read that one. Actually, I think I read that one in my drinking days, because I was probably seeking some kind of spiritual balance, though I didn't really have those words for it. But in the Four Agreements, one of his strong suggestions was impeccable speech. And then that came up in recovery circles, too.
That just reminds me of that meme where it's just some Asian sign above a urinal that's pee impeccably or something like that. Pee with precision and grace. I don't know why that comes to my head. I look at too many memes.
Well, yeah, I guess so. That was a lingering thing in my head about impeccable speech. I mean, communications interested me for a long time, but not until I got into a Buddhist recovery program did I start learning kind of rules around speech that would make for a better life, I guess we'll put it. So feel free to jump in if you have any questions.
I'm just stuck on the 4 agreements while you were drinking. I'm agreement number 1, beer before liquor or something.
Yeah. I don't know. It was a short book. I definitely was not a big reader in my drinking days. I used to be before I was a big drinker, and then reading kind of fell to the wayside. But this book was small, and I think I took it in a day, and then went back to drinking. Reading got in the way of my drinking. Right. But I guess that's a small book, so I got that one.
Can you read drunk? Is that a thing?
No.
Do people read drunk?
No, you can't.
Do people even try?
I think it makes me dizzy just thinking about it.
I get bored, pass out, mind wanders. I used to be a really big reader in high school, and then...
That's what happens to me when I read now. I get bored, fall asleep, mind wanders.
Just don't teach this concept too well, because I feel like most of my speech isn't wise speech, and I'm okay with it, so I don't want to get too wise.
Yeah, this whole podcast is not wise speech. The opposite.
And I am not perfect. What I'm going to tell you, what I've learned about Buddhism and wise speech.
You're not perfect.
I don't believe it or not.
Just leave.
Yeah.
Just leave now.
Bye, guys.
The only reason we had you on here.
So where were we? Okay. So first of all, I am not an official Buddhist teacher. I am just a Buddhist aficionado. Everything I know about Buddhism, I've learned from Refuge Recovery and Recovery Dharma. I've watched podcasts. I've watched YouTube and podcasts, Tara Brach, Jack Kornfield, and Doug Secular Dharma. I have to give a shout out to him. He's taught me a lot about Buddhism. So I'm not any kind of certified Buddhist teacher. I'm just going to tell you guys what I've learned.
This is so judgy of me, but you said those two names, and I was like, oh, white people Buddhism.
Yeah, and they'll call it that too. They know. Yeah, but they're trying to do better. They're trying.
Does that like clarification of that you're not a Buddhist teacher, does that come from like a self-worth kind of thing? Like, I better clarify I'm not good enough before I start.
Maybe it's a disclaimer, as if like, hey, if I get it wrong, go easy on me.
Don't you think anybody who's well versed enough to know you got it wrong would go easy on you because they have wise speech?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Old habits die hard. I don't know.
I know. I'm therapizing our podcast here.
Where were we? Okay, so I'm going to start with, in Buddhism, there's the Eightfold Path, and wise speech is one of the folds, we'll say. So a quick rundown of the Eightfold Path. It's wise intention and wise understanding. That's the wisdom section.
Wise intention and wise understanding.
That's in the wisdom section. Don't get too hung up there. Hold on.
No, I'm just thinking.
The next section is the ethics section. That's wise speech, wise action, and wise livelihood. Ethics. And then finally is the mind section, wise effort, wise meditation, wise concentration. So that's a quick rundown of the Eightfold Path. Now we'll go back to wise speech, which is in the ethics.
I got so many questions. Like, why is it folds? Why is it 8 folds?
I don't know.
Is it like laundry?
Yeah, that's a good
Is it a
question.
laundry list?
I guess it's just kind of like the language of the era.
Mm.
You know, it's often represented by a wheel, 8 spokes in a wheel. That's not folds. I don't know.
Right.
So
the 8-spoke path.
the 8-spoke path. Not
That doesn't sound
nearly
really good either.
Flowy.
Maybe because they're overlapping. Like you can't have one without the other.
It's true. That's true.
Maybe because
They work together all the time.
They're not.
It's warm and fuzzy like laundry. Like when you take it out of the dryer and you fold it, it's like,
that's exactly it.
8-fold path.
That's what they were thinking.
It's so warm.
A little scent of Febreze to it. Yeah.
Use dryer sheets. I thought we all knew dryer sheets were made up and you really need them. The wise thing, like the wise is in front of all those folds, like the wise folds. It just seems so subjective. Like who's judging the wise, right? Because you got the wise people on Facebook yelling that, the fake news and sheeple and all that. They think they're wise, and then the people following the scientists think they're wise, and like that's it just leaves a lot of room for.
Well, you're
debate.
not judging somebody else. It's your actions. It's your own. Do your best. Use your best wisdom with these.
Ooh, that sounds dangerous in our world. Do you want everybody to follow the rules, Billy, or to follow their own wisdom?
I'm a rule follower, so I like people that follow the rules.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I trust everybody following their own wisdom, but that might not be wise speech with me to put people down like that. All right, sorry.
Well, ideally, they're cultivating a nice inner self so that they are doing well.
I have a feeling this idea of all these wises, the different ones in the path, none of them are specifically about like a rule or a right or a wrong. They're probably all more focused on like what's kind and loving and treating other people nicely, not what's right or wrong or what you're owed or who did you wrong. And, they're not supposed to lose an eye because they took your eye or like, it's not about that. It's like, how can you be good?
Yeah, it really is. It's just intuitively like, hey, what's the kindest, least harmful way? So when I do break down the rules, because Buddhism has, I guess they're guidelines. They're not rules. The Buddha's like, hey, if you want less suffering, follow these guidelines.
I wonder if it should be like kind instead of wise, like kind speech.
Well,
kind intention.
Similar to you, I try to not think of wise as in smart, but like the wise is more of you should be like thoughtful in what you do. You should not just be reactive, but you should like think before you do these things and actually like try to incorporate them into your life, not just do whatever you feel like all the time.
So maybe the wise is also a hangover like fold. Like maybe it's just a word from another era where like thoughtful is more the interpretation of it. Like that makes more sense.
And you can't use mindful because that's way overused.
Oh yeah. That's white people Buddhism too.
And so sometimes instead of wise, they say right.
Ugh,
they
I
say
like that
right
even less.
speech. Yeah.
I'm going with Billy on this one. I like thoughtful. That makes more sense.
Thoughtful. Well, I think what they're trying to indicate is, it's like your highest self. Like, so it's all like using your intelligence, your kindness, your all the best of you put into that. So it's incorporating the best of you, noblest of you.
Yeah, it's a Foo Fighters song.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. I've held us up long enough. Let's get to this wise stuff.
So, wise speech. So, is part of the Eightfold Path. And now, when you work the Eightfold Path, it's not like 12 steps where you do them in order. You'll learn them in a certain order, but when you work them, you kind of do them all at once. I know that sounds intimidating, but some situations call for a little of this, little of that. So, when you're communicating with your boss, you want to use wise speech and wise effort, or you combine the different aspects of the Eightfold Path as the situation needs it. You're going to choose it all starts with intention. Let me go back to that. Intention, especially with speech, if you set out the intention, you're like, I want to do my best and I want to speak from my highest self, that's where it begins. And wise intention is the first one you learn in the Eightfold Path, at least in the ways I've learned Buddhism.
Is that the first in the list?
It is. Yeah, it's the first in the list. And that's how
Wise
I've learned
intention.
it, with Recovery Dharma and Refuge. And you start with intention. What's your intention?
So that's a foundational principle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not honesty. I feel like in 12-step, honesty is that first foundational principle, which we just talked about recently.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
But I feel like intention comes even maybe before that, or maybe intention is a part of honesty, that self-honesty piece.
Could we compare to the word willingness that they throw around in 12 steps?
Do you think intention is willingness? I don't think of intention as willingness. You did say the thing about you kind of work all these at once, but I feel like even though the steps are laid out to work in a certain order one at a time, we commonly hear in a meeting or not, you live these long before you work them or understand them or any of that. You do start applying them even before, especially when you start trying to apologize in your first week.
That's true. And I've heard, every day I wake up and do the first 3 steps. People do the 12 steps every day, So
yeah, intention. I don't know if that has an equivalent in our spiritual principles.
I can't think of an equivalent. I mean,
I feel like it involves some of them, though. You need the self-honesty of the intention that you're setting, right? What is my intention going into this situation? Is it to get over on somebody, or is it to really help somebody else? So you need some of our principles to get the intention, but I don't know that we have a...
Well, and funny enough, when I think of intention immediately in recovery, what I think back to is people shouldn't judge you by your intentions. They judge you by your actions. I'm not judged by my intentions. And where that for me comes from is I've heard it sort of explained that when I was using, it wasn't yeah, I'm going to go steal from my family so that I can get more drugs and do all this stuff. It was I did it. I'm man, that was terrible. Or when I said I was going to show up for somebody's birthday party or get somebody a present or do any of those things, my intention was to do those things. My actions never followed up with that intention. So my intention meant nothing. My intention is worthless because my action didn't represent my intention.
Yeah, and I've kind of heard that too, that similar idea. When we're in active use, we think people are going to judge us by our intentions, but they don't because they never see them. They only see the actions that don't follow the intentions that aren't good. But then, the idea of recovery is to live more in line with our intentions because that's what people are judging is the action part of it. But and I'm sure, this probably starts as a get to know the intention and then be able to follow it. That's probably the rest of the 7 folds is the ways to actually live in that intention. But we need a new step. We need step 0.5.
Well, I don't think Buddhists approach life from the standpoint of you're a totally fucked up mess piece of shit. You need to reevaluate your life, And when we come into recovery, that's what we're coming in with. We're coming in with, you're totally screwed up and a fucking mess. So you need to just sit down and shut up and listen to us.
Well, and that's, I know we like to say that this is a spiritual, not religious program, but really our whole Western society is based around Christianity.
Oh, for sure.
And Christianity's beliefs are people are fucking sinners at heart. And if you don't do something about that, you're just a piece of shit. You got to do something and, get your Jesus or whatever it is to get better because at your core, you're bad. Like, that's where Christianity starts, is you're bad, and this is going to make you better. And like, I agree. I think Buddhism and other philosophies are like, oh no, we're good. We just need to find ways to be that.
Well, I guess in some respects, it is important that our intentions are good, because if my intentions all along are to like steal from people and hurt the people that I love, then I got no hope of changing that behavior. Like if that's my intention from the fucking get-go, then we're really in trouble.
Step point 5, we realized our intention sucked.
The Buddhists do believe that you are good on the inside. So, when sick people come in to the program, it's like, well, this person is consumed by greed, hatred, and delusion right now. So, using compassion and kindness and patience, help them get well.
It's like therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Buddhism and therapy go good together.
I don't want to take us too far off track, but like, this is kind of the debate in America right now, right? I feel like one side of the people feel like people are bad to begin with, right? And they're like, no, we can't give out child stimulus credits permanently because people will spend them on drugs and not go to work.
Right.
Like that's the argument, right? Like, or we can't give out this money. We got to drug test people because we just know they're fucking stealing from our taxes. Like, and then the other half is like, well, we just want to give these people the benefit of the doubt and give them some money so that they can try to not be poor. Right. So it's very much this kind of debate in our world today of and I think that holdover of people are bad to begin with, and we should always come from that angle. That's very much a Christian belief. And it's weird when you think of Christianity and all this love and peace and joy and shit, but what you realize is no, it's a judgmental, I think people start as being bad and we should protect ourselves from that. I'm like, Rrr.
Well, I mean, my experience with Christianity is that's been the difference of the versions that have appealed to me over the years versus the ones that haven't. Like, I was raised in that Catholic, very judgy, you're a sinner kind of way, and that pushed me away from a relationship with God or anything. And at other times, I've been involved with churches and organized Christian religions that do focus way more on the love side of things and way less on the judgy kind of thing. So if you look, you can find it. But you're right. In common, it seems like, especially the older ones, like the older the religion, it's more the newer, non-denominational, non-secular ones that seem to be more focused on like the loving aspects.
Well, and I don't want to be taken wrong here. I'm not saying that Christians are bad people or that that's their focus, but I think Christianity as a religion is based on the idea of original sin, and you're born with it, and you have to do these things to not be bad. Like, it's not that I'm saying that everybody who practices Christianity thinks that way or wants to hate people or any of that. Like, it's just that it's now ingrained in our society and our pop culture beliefs. Like, it's a very ingrained idea that people start
almost
bad.
Subliminally. Like, it's an undertone or whatever.
Right, exactly. It's not that I think that practicing Christians are, necessarily consciously operate from that, but I do think it is so in our fiber right now. Like, this is what we believe.
Yeah. And it's funny, I find myself saying that kind of stuff to people all the time, like, and not for Buddhist reasons, but just in general. I believe most people are good. Most people want to do the right things. Most people don't want to cause harm in the lives of others. And so I try to approach people that way. I mean,
that sounds like wise speech, Billy. Sorry, Jenny.
Very wise.
Let's go back to the wise speech.
Okay. So let me include here, in Buddhism, they have the precepts. Have you heard of that? So these will be in comparison to like the 12 commandments, but in Buddhism, they have the 5 precepts, bare minimum.
Oh, there's only 5. That sounds way more doable
hold on
than 12.
Now. Other sections of Buddhism have like up to 36, but these 5 are usually across the board in all the different varieties of Buddhism. And the 5 are no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying. That's the speech one. And no intoxicants. No lying. The Buddha was very firm about honesty. And I guess that's where you can tie it into the 12 steps. The Buddha was very firm, like, yes, you should always be honest, bare minimum.
Huh.
So that's part of the 5 precepts of Buddhism.
We need to have him on our honesty episode because we just decided that was not the case.
Yeah, we decided it's not great all the time.
I'm going to argue with Buddha now.
I'll have to re-listen to that one. I'm sure I heard it. We'll have honesty
it's a new
part
one.
2. Okay.
It is honesty part 2. We just recorded it.
All right. Well, maybe I'll be around for honesty part 3 and can speak up for the Buddha.
There you go.
Or get somebody who knows more.
Yeah, well, you'll take the test and tell us what Buddha would have done.
All right. Channel my inner Buddha. We all have a Buddha inside.
That sounds like it's sexual misconduct. Sorry. It's a very, I tell you, this tells you what I think of myself. Every time she says no sexual misconduct as a Buddhist precept, like I think she said that on another episode, I was like, who's judging this sexual misconduct?
Right. What is sexual misconduct?
I don't know if I agree with this one. All the rest of them sound good. No killing, sure. No sexual misconduct. I don't know. I might be a little misconducty.
Anyway, so why is wise speech important to recovery?
Yes.
I'm sure all three of us have a ton of stories of how we have lied, manipulated to get what we want. But then also like...
And that's just yesterday.
Yeah. And then wise speech includes all the ways we communicate, especially, these days, texting, social media, emails. So it's not just speaking, it's all the ways we communicate. And we should include listening too. All the things we take in, all the information we take in.
Oh my God, I lied. Friday.
Okay, let's hear about it.
So I was supposed to go hang out with my buddy. We had planned it a couple weeks ago.
Oh my God, you're going to confess this, right?
I
On
am.
air?
Jack, I'm sorry already if you're listening. We were supposed to hang out. I was looking forward to it. We were supposed to hang out right after Christmas, but then he had to work, and then we planned this next hangout. And then my wife and I did not ever get my daughter's basketball games on our calendar. And so she had a game at 6:00 and I didn't realize it. So I was feeling ill all week. And then Thursday I felt really ill. I left work. I went and got a COVID test. Negative. Yay. So Friday came. Well, I told him Thursday night, I was like, man, I don't know. I'm not feeling so hot. We'll have to see tomorrow. So then Friday came and I had missed my daughter's basketball game Thursday night because I didn't feel well. And then she had one Friday and I felt like I was supposed to be there. Now, I did feel better Friday. I felt like it was more complicated and sounded more like a lie if I said, hey, I do feel better, but I realized my daughter has a basketball game that I didn't know about and I can't make it. I felt like it was less lie sounding if I just stuck with not feeling well. And I didn't want him to think I was lying to him, which is sad because I think he trusts me. But I was like, this just sounds like too much to explain through text to say that I do feel a little better. But so like if my daughter didn't have a basketball game, I would have went and hung out. It was really my daughter's basketball game that helped me out. Right. I felt good enough that I would have went and hung out Friday night. But I just went with, I'm still not feeling good. It's not going to happen. So yeah, sorry, Jack. It's not the truth. That's weird, though. I felt like the truth sounded more like a lie, and I was worried about it.
You really overthink that one. Yeah.
I probably did.
Daddy excuses always win. So you just say, got to hang out with my daughter. Nobody can argue with that. You could have just told the truth.
No, but yeah. It didn't. Mm-hmm. After if I'd have never said I felt sick, I could have said that.
Well, you know what? It's a lot about practice, too. Wise speech is a lot about practice and being compassionate with yourself. So I would say don't beat yourself up too much about this, but maybe try better next time.
Yeah. Okay. No lying. Until it makes sense again.
So, in our addiction too, we caused harm. Like we said some mean shit. Who here said mean shit to their partner? Well, you didn't have a wife when you were in active addiction. Oh man, I was drunk with a husband. I said some mean shit. I can't believe he stayed with me.
Right? I don't have to be drunk.
Really?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. You don't ever say mean shit to your husband?
You guys
shit
hate
to my
Buddhism.
kid.
You don't say mean shit to your husband now?
Let's call him up. I don't think so. I try not to harm him.
What do you consider mean shit?
Well, when I was drunk, I'm not even. It's too embarrassing. I'm not going to tell you that stuff. But
yeah, I don't even have to ask that. Honestly,
yeah.
I know I say mean shit now. I don't have to compare.
Now, James and I are really we really do talk nicely to each other. I'm not saying we don't get mad every once in a while.
That's where the honesty piece comes into problem. Sometimes the honesty can be mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to live that way. Like, yeah, my dad and stepmom, they used to always argue, and it was so uncomfortable to go over there. I just don't want to live that way.
Yeah, me and my wife don't argue a lot. I mean, it's really pretty rare. I'm a walk-awayer. I'm not an arguer.
Depends on when you catch me.
Well, especially now in recovery, like I have the language and the practice to be like, hey, you know what? I'm getting a little worked up. Can we just take 5? And I'll do that, But things are pretty chummy.
Okay.
I hope.
So
I don't know.
we said mean shit to our partners.
Yeah. So yeah, and
Not drunk.
and other people. I mean, like other people. Like I did awful shit in the bar. Like and we would pull pranks and lie, and we were just fucking bullies. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So
Not in the bar, but on the street corner. There's definitely a lot of lying and manipulating. And
and I was once you're in that game, I'm just you also become a victim of it. I mean, and that's the karma part. Once if you're gonna live that life, it will come back to you. The same way you treat people is how you get treated. And anyway, something else to consider with wise speech is how you talk to others is a practice in how you talk to yourself. So your inner voice, how you talk to yourself is how you talk to other people, and how you talk to other people is probably how you talk to yourself. So when I'm being a shit to other people, chances are my inner language is also pretty shitty. Follow me?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're saying it works in a specific order, but I definitely use that as a tool in therapy when people talk about like being judgmental of others. That's like, oh, well, let's look at that because that's exactly how you're judging you too.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. So they're definitely related.
Yeah. As a practice. Now, in another episode, we talked about the inner critic, Sharon, my inner critic who was not Billy's mom.
Sharon!
Yeah. So, I had to get like a better language in my head. And it started with like, it was back and forth. I wouldn't say there was an order, but the kinder I spoke to myself, when I caught myself speaking unkindly to me, I would correct that. And then I found myself being more patient and considerate with other people in my life who were frustrating. And it was back and forth. And, it kept elevating. And now it's pretty good.
So all the angry people we see in Facebook comments really just hate themselves?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably pretty unhappy. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how bullies are. They're probably bullied at home. So, they have a shitty life at home. So they project it out to kids, coworkers, people at the bus stop, whatever.
I think that's a good way to get people to feel compassionate for bullies, but I don't know that I think that's true. I don't think that every bully has a terrible life, and that's why they're mean to other people.
Oh, but I do, though. I do believe that.
Like, I kind of believe that, too.
I ooze with, I err on the side of compassion. Sometimes it's bad. Like, I feel bad for the worst people.
Well, we should. I don't think that we shouldn't, but I'm just saying, I think that is a rationalization to help us feel compassionate towards them. Like, you can still, like, if someone's hurting other people, they're probably still angry or hurt for some reason, but it may not be the severe abuse that they're suffering at home. It could have just been they didn't get the Xbox they wanted, so they're going to go to school and punch some kid who's smaller than them.
It's weird we're in different places with that. Like, you don't believe it's true, you believe it's true and treat them with compassion, and I believe it's true, but I want to hit them with the fucking compassion stick. Like a really hard compassion stick. Like, I will bully you into fucking being nicer.
Like the Zen people do.
Well, I guess where I'm coming from is, does it really like, I should be compassionate towards those people no matter what the reason is. I don't need to make a story up for why I think they're the way they are. Good. That doesn't really matter. What matters is how am I treating them, and I can still be compassionate towards them despite whatever narrative I tell myself in my head of why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a waste of thought.
I mean, I don't know if you've all seen all the Marvel movies or whatever. That's my world. But like, when you think of a guy like Thanos as the villain who wants to wipe out half of the universe because there's not enough resources for everybody and it's going to get bad. Like, understanding his backstory is what makes you feel like, oh, I do kind of get that. If he was just a guy who was like, no, I just want to kill half the fucking people because fuck them, right? Like, I don't feel any attachment to him now. Now he's just a piece of shit. So I don't know. I don't know that I can have compassion without understanding that there's something that happened that kind of created this person in the way they are.
But if you don't ask them, you don't know. You're just making up a story.
Well, I don't necessarily make up a story about any great tragedy or anything. I just, to me, it's like a flower that you plant in your, house. Like, even though 10 years later, it's blooming, it's beautiful, it's green, whatever, I don't know that someone watered it and nurtured it and put it in sunlight, but I do know that something happened to get it to be a beautiful, thriving plant 10 years later. Like, I don't have to necessarily make up the specific story, but I know things don't just happen, right? Like, I do know there is a story. There's something that led them there. It doesn't necessarily matter what, but something led them to be this person. Like, it didn't just, they didn't come out of the womb like smacking their mother like, bitch, give me that fucking milk. Like,
Nice.
I don't think that happens like that. I think there's always a story.
I think people are too varied to say that that's true. I think there are some people that are just bad. Not most, but some are.
I don't know.
And I guess my point is, I don't think it matters. Like, I still can be compassionate towards people despite why they do what they do.
Why would I be compassionate to a bad person?
I don't think people are just bad.
I don't either.
Maybe this is my naivete. Like, I think everybody's good. Just
Well, all
something
people
happened to
aren't
them.
everything. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's
Right.
not everything. Like, there are people that are born with whatever mental health defects or whatever, that they just don't have certain sociopaths and psychopaths and all those are things that exist
Well, that's
that
their
are
story.
independent of surroundings.
Yeah, isn't that nature?
That's their story, though. That's what happened to them. They were
Sociopaths
born
come
with
from nature.
mental health issues or brains that don't operate right. Like, there's some story is what I'm getting at. There's something that they didn't. I mean, I guess in that sense, they did just come out that way, but that's still their story.
That's nature
to me.
Yeah, I think I said that
Nature
wrong.
makes
though.
bad things sometimes.
Yeah, my bad. I think I said it wrong. So sociopaths come from poor nurturing, not nature. They're not born sociopaths. It comes from how they were brought up. I said that backwards.
There's no official.
No?
No,
Okay.
not really.
I thought. I'm not.
I've just been working on this area of my life, so and it's in my meditation and stuff like that. Like, I run through life telling myself a lot of stories about why a lot of things are and why this is that way, and like, for me, that's not really the point of how I want to live. I want to live just being open to the situation that's in front of me and just reacting in the best self that I am, not trying to make up stories and excuses for why these people do that or why I do this, or it's like that underlying narrative telling myself all these stories in my head is that's caught up in my own self-centeredness. So I'm trying to get away from that.
I mean, I think as humans, we are storytelling, meaning-making people. That's what our brains do. And usually it is after the fact of something happening. And so it kind of doesn't really help changing it or our understanding of it. So I agree necessarily not to put too much stock in the exact story. But I think for me, I have to believe that there is a story that a person ended up not being the kindest, gentlest, nicest, erring on the side of humanity person. Like, if I just believe that, it's possible they woke up one day and were like, fuck people, I hate them. Like, I can't like that person anymore. I can't have compassion for them. If that's just a true decision, if I believe that and that there's no story, I don't.
Then
I
it's
got
hard to
nothing for
have
you.
the compassion.
Yeah. Impossible, really.
I'm really thinking about where you're coming from, Billy. And for me, at this point, I probably could meditate on it more, but that would be too bypassy. Like, just to be like, okay, everybody's fine. For some reason, there's something about me. I do have to put some kind of story behind it. Even if I don't know the story, I can be like, well, I can imagine it might be this, and that's why they got there.
Well, if I relate, I'm sorry, not to cut you off. So if I related it back to addiction, let's say, addiction, I think a lot of people say a similar thing. Like, nobody's just an addict for no reason. It's usually some trauma or something. It's born out of somewhere. And that, I mean, I don't know that I would disagree with that, but that trauma can be, in some cases, what I would consider so minor, they were slighted by a parent or treated a little differently than another sibling. And it's like, that's fucking not really trauma. But to that person, it was traumatic, And so for me, the reason why people are addicts is not as important as what they are and what I can do for them now, I guess.
Just treating them with respect. That's
Correct.
the bottom line. Just going to treat you with respect. Don't care about the story.
Right.
Well, and if you hear Gabor Mate talk, like, his point is to change the question from why are you like this to what happened to you in your story that this is what's going on now, right? And not that part of that can't be the genetics you were born with, but it's more moving away from the shame-based question of why are you like this, right? Because people, like, if I'm feeling really depressed and I can't get out of it and I can't do these things I want to do in my life, saying why am I like this is a shame-based question. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Whereas what happened to me that I've gotten here, that's more of a curiosity and an exploration question where we can move into, like, starting to have compassion for ourselves. And I guess that's where I'm coming from, is like, I need to believe that there's some story, even if that's genetics, even if that's you were born this way and you can't help it. Like, there's some story that makes you today make sense and makes it not your fault. That's my goal. I don't want it. If it's somebody's fault, then I fucking hate them.
Gotcha. Yeah,
If you're
that
a
makes
shitty
sense.
person because it's your fault, then we got issues. But I don't believe that exists personally.
I guess I do. I believe that
Okay.
exists. But and I guess for me, it doesn't, like, I shouldn't change the way I treat that person because I believe that exists. You know what I mean? Like, for me, and I'm not saying I do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect by any means. But my general philosophy is that I should treat that person the same no matter what. I mean, because even if I know someone's a drug addict and they suffered all this trauma and abuse and neglect and everything else, doesn't necessarily mean I'm inviting them into my house to sleep on my couch, because they'll still steal all my shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's getting way off of probably why I speak.
Yeah, I don't know where the hell.
Yeah. This episode has been brought to you in part by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit recovery organization made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, harm reduction and support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopemaryland.org and consider donating to our cause.
Back to speaking wisely, thoughtfully.
Wise speech. No, it was a good sidetrack. Back to speech. Important, too, is observe how you are speaking and the reaction to it. So when you speak, I'll give you some guidelines in a little bit. When you speak honestly, when you are speaking helpful and beneficial with kindness, when you're considering your audience so that you're clear and the timing is good, you'll observe a good reaction to that. You'll see that it was good for you, good for your audience, your listener, whatever. But when you don't follow those guidelines from the Buddha, you'll observe that it's bad. So you get that instant reward. And I know a lot of people are like, God, do we have to do this every single time? And well, kind of, yeah. Until you get practice. Like, slow down, pay attention to what you're doing, and then observe when you do things right. You get a good reaction. When you do things poorly, not so much. But always be kind to yourself and just try to do better next time. And that's the practice of wise speech.
What's a good reaction? Like, from the people you're talking to?
Yeah, I mean, like, so if it was it beneficial to them? Did you guys move forward? Are you still feeling at peace and, like, not negative, I guess?
So how can you always be honest and still, like, I feel like people's reactions to honesty aren't necessarily positive all the time. Like, that can hurt people.
It's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky. I wish I had an example off the top of my head, but, like, yeah, so it's like your wife is like, how do I look? And you're whatever. It's like maybe not your favorite dress or something, How would you do that positively? Could be like, I like the purple one better. I don't know. Like, if you just, baby, you always look beautiful, something like that,
Well,
I don't know.
Well, part of it, I think, comes back to, I'm going to use listening, but it's not even maybe listening as much as, like, observing how the people, like, paying attention to how the people are receiving what you're saying or how they're reacting to what you're saying, I think matters in that context. Because, like, Jason and I can disagree on stuff, and we'll sit here and talk, and we'll kind of go back and forth, but I don't ever particularly feel insulted, and I don't think he does, but I can have some of those same conversations with my wife, and she very much gets really pissed at me. Like, she feels like I'm being angry and argumentative, and you know what I mean? So I feel like paying attention to how the person I'm talking to is reacting to what I'm saying is important.
Totally. And the timing, too. So what if you get home and you want to talk to Jen about the same things we talked about today, but she's got other things on her mind, work, kids, whatever, and you're trying to explain to her about this wise speech discussion. And, if she's not in the time and space for it, yeah, it's going to come out all wrong. She's not going to hear the message. So you have to consider all those things.
Right.
Yeah, with your wife's speech. I'm like on the other end of this, I think. I not that I think being in tune with the people around you and that you're talking to isn't useful at times, but I don't want to base whether I'm succeeding at wise speech or my intentions by other people's reactions, because I feel like this is kind of goes back to the idea that I used to believe that there was this one right way I could act and live that no one around me would be offended or hurt by. And I don't believe that to be true anymore. Like, I can do all the right things in my life and somebody is still not happy with them. Like, that's just reality. Like, when I'm doing the right thing for my wife, it might be a kid that's not happy. Or when I'm doing the right thing as a parent, my kid's definitely not happy. And when I'm doing the right thing for me, my wife's not always happy. Like, somebody's always upset by my right thing. And so I don't want to judge my rightness or what I'm doing or how well I'm doing it by other people's reactions at all.
Yeah, and this is maybe slightly different than some of that, but like I had a situation at work on, I think it was Friday, with one of the guys that I work with is very, I don't know which denomination, but definitely old school Christian, like, hardcore. And he was talking about, he lives over in New Jersey and was talking about, the crime rate over there and stealing people's cars. And he's saying stuff like, we need to go back to the days when if people stole things, we just cut their hands off and things like that. And I'm like, and I want to go, that's fucking ridiculous. Like, that is not a way that people live nowadays. Like, we've learned that, one, that doesn't really fix the problems anyway. It never did. Punishment doesn't fix problems. And secondly, like, is that a fair punishment for someone stealing something, to cut their hand off? Like, but the point is, like, I start to get riled up and I start to want to say something. And then I like to think my unintentional wise speech brain kicks in and says, is anything I'm going to say going to make any difference to this person? And do I really feel it necessary to try to change his beliefs or get into what I'm going to consider, and this is probably judgy to say, but a waste of my fucking energy and thought to get into some philosophical debate with someone that I think is completely irrational, So I just refrained and said, well, if you really want to deal with a lot of these problems, if you address poverty, you would see that a lot of these problems would reduce on their own. And then I just left it at that.
Whose taxes pay for all these handless people that
right.
can't work anymore?
No, they can't. Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous comments. And, it's like, is it going to be worth my energy to start engaging in that round of conversation?
That is wise. I think you handled it wisely. But if you really thought this man was going to go start chopping off hands and you didn't say something, then that would be not wise speech. Like, if you really thought he was going to go literally chop off people's hands, it is important for you to say something. But this guy's just kind of blowing off steam and trying to make something colorful or whatever, draw attention to himself.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to picture if we could learn to steal with our feet. Is that what would happen? We'd evolve to have, like, feet thieves.
I've seen those people type on keyboards and shit with their feet.
Yeah, maybe they'll be crypto thieves.
Yeah, right.
So moving on with wise speech, it's important to refrain from false speech, divisive speech. Do you know what divisive means?
I do, but why don't you tell us more about it?
Okay, because that is a weird word, but they always say it in Buddhism. I had to kind of get some clarity on that. But divisive is dividing. So to me, I always picture like the politician who's like, in their speech is like putting down a certain section of society, or that's how I think of divisive speech.
Them mentality.
Yeah. Anything that separates the Buddha was not down with. Harsh speech and idle chatter. Let's talk about idle chatter. So idle chatter is like gossip, small talk, that kind of stuff. But listen, hear me out though.
Yeah, right.
But there is a difference between small talk and connection talk. So like say you're in a workspace with somebody and you might indulge in quote unquote idle chatter because you need to connect with this person. If you're going to work together, it'd be nice to know a little bit about them, or be like, hey, you see the sports game, or whatever. So
catch some shitty Bengals winning yesterday.
I was upset about that too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
good job connecting you two.
wise speech.
So I have a gossip story to tell you. so when I first started down the Buddhist path, so I have these 3 really good girlfriends, and we get together as often as we can, which isn't very often these days, but like coffee or whatever. And our old practice used to be we would gossip a lot. Like it just that's how us moms were, you know. And when I started
guys at work do that too, so it's not just moms.
Yeah. So when I started exploring Buddhist recovery, and they're excited for me, they're great cheerleaders for my recovery. And I said, hey, one of the rules is wise speech, which includes gossip. So, you know, we gossip a lot. I'm going to have to cut that out. And the girls were like, yeah, I think we should just let that go. And they were all like in agreement, like, yeah. And now our conversations have so much more depth, like because we remove that. Like if we catch ourselves gossiping, we're like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't talk about that. Now our conversations honestly have filled in with much more meaningful stuff. Like when we took gossip out, we have better conversations.
Huh. That's not how I saw that going.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say they stopped coming over.
Right.
No. Like,
they said that was a good idea, and then they went and gossiped about me.
Right.
How I didn't want to
They made
gossip
their
anymore.
own group talking about
yeah,
me.
they were in like chat group, and I'm not part of. Yeah.
Right. Can you believe that Jenny doesn't want to gossip anymore? What the fuck is wrong with her?
So, and again, not for the specific purpose of wise speech, but I've noticed that about myself. Like and we talked about some of this on the podcast at one time too, is like at work when I'm talking to other supervisors about other employees and how to do that in a way that's beneficial versus a way that's just gossiping about, oh, so-and-so did this or this person did that or what a pain in the ass, you know. And I try to stop because it makes me feel like I don't like that part about myself. There's a underlying, like, that's not the way that I want to be. I don't want people to talk that way about me when I'm not around. So why am I talking about them when I'm around, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like when people gossip, if I'm partaking and I hear gossip and I know that when I'm not there, then it's me. Like, you know, that's just how they are. So,
yeah.
But so I usually choose friends that don't do that. You know, it's a real hardship round. This is a challenge though. Skipping ahead. So I have neighbors who engage in racist speech, and
oof, yeah, that's hard.
It's hard. You know, if it's really blatant, like somebody called Obama the N-word, and I was like, yo, we can't do that, you know. But even if it's like that low key, like they'll mention somebody was black, like it has nothing to do with the conversation, but they'll like slide that in. I'm like, how is that important to the story? Like, what are you trying to convey here? But I don't say anything. I'm just like, ugh, I hate where this is going, you know. Or and this is usually like with my neighbors, and so people I want to like keep the peace with, don't want to like ruffle feathers. So this is something I really have to work on, is like, when do I speak up? How do I speak up compassionately? I usually just end up being silent, which is also kind of a crime, you know, like I should say something, but this is like, I want to do better with this. Like I want to speak up more when there's like racist speech, but I just don't know how yet. Working on it.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes. I mean, especially when you can feel in your environment outnumbered. And it's like, how do I speak up without attacking or you know, alienating myself at the same time? Because to alienate me doesn't necessarily help, right? Like if I just make myself on the outside of the group, now I'm just another person they don't like, and the group doesn't really change or shift. And really, I think the goal is to help awaken people, you know, and you can't do that if you're the outsider as well.
Right.
Usually I do the old like, oh, look at the time, I got to go, you know, like kind of thing. And I just kind of excuse myself if things get like, politics can get kind of heated, or if I just feel like the conversation's going like kind of a racist way, I'm just like, gotta go.
Well, I've learned, and this is maybe more of a tactical thing, is a lot of what people are bringing up as quote unquote racist problems. We have those same exact problems here in Cecil County in predominantly white neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Like we have Winding Brook and Lakeside and, you know, these other, what I'm going to call the bad areas of town. And it's all white people doing the same exact shit as is happening in any, you know, of these other neighborhoods that may be more colorful. And I just try to bring that in some way into the conversation. Like, oh yeah, well, I live in Cecil County and we have that exact same problem. And we're like, what, 10%, you know, minority in this community. Like we're predominantly white people, you can go into some of these neighborhoods and see the exact same thing. So I don't think race is the big driver there. And that's usually how I'll slip that stuff into conversations.
You're quick. You think of things quick. I don't always have like the data.
Well,
like,
I've worked
handy.
through it a lot.
Yeah.
Because I felt the same way. Like, I always feel uncomfortable with that, you know. It's an uncomfortable place to be. And this is a racist area. Like,
it's hot.
getting better.
Yeah, it's just a hot
it's getting
conversation
better.
nationwide. Like, it's a
Right.
hot topic nationwide. And I just, you know, just trying to do better. You know, like if I'm going to do anything, I want to do it right, you know. So something else, I'm just kind of jumping all around. I want to make sure I include everything. Using speech to ask for help, too. So, like, someone in addiction, you know, if they were using wise speech, like we hid our addictions. We didn't ask for help. We didn't tell people we were suffering. But if we were using wise speech, if we were practicing that, we could have been like, oh my God, I'm hurting. Oh my God, I'm addicted. Oh my God, I can't stop. Like, we're not using that. And if we're not being honest with ourselves, that makes it even harder, you know. So this is why wise speech is important to recovery. What do you guys think about sarcasm?
I love it.
Sarcasm's terrible.
Yeah.
He says sarcastically.
90% of my communication is sarcasm.
I used to be a lot more sarcastic till I came to recovery. I've chilled out a lot. Some of it was so mean. I don't want to be mean anymore.
Is my sarcasm mean? Give us examples of mean sarcasm.
Oh, I don't know. I guess like this. I'm out of practice, man. But like, you know, the subtle put down, I guess.
I use that a lot with my kids.
Yeah. At home,
Like,
my wife
nice
is,
job there. Ugh.
Yeah, my wife has been a huge pusher of no sarcasm. Like, mean what you say and say what you mean. Like, no sarcasm with each other in the house, which is hard because I'm sarcastic a lot, and she'll bring it up. So it's gotten better. It's still prevalent at most other areas of my life, but not at home as much.
I can imagine your workplace being kind of all the guys. Yeah.
I'm picturing like my kids making a sandwich and like botching the job all up, and me being like, "Why don't you spread the bread on the jelly?" It's doing great there, son. Like,
maybe now's a good time to observe the reaction to that. Observe how you feel, how they feel.
They usually laugh. Because it's like it's
They're
not
crying on the inside.
Yeah,
They might be, but it's.
Daddy
I guess
doesn't love me.
I don't know if it's sarcasm or like this tendency to find joy and humor in the absurd, right?
There's that.
Like, I'll say a statement that's like so out there, and obviously we both know that's not what they were trying to do, but like it just, you know, it seems so ludicrous that it's like entertaining for us.
That one is pretty ludicrous.
And there is funny sarcasm and then more sort of mean. Like you said, like the put downs and stuff can be.
Going back to my wise intention, it's a way for me to connect.
Okay.
I think. I hope it's not painful for them.
Yep.
Like, but I feel like it's a way for us to share in a moment of like, hi, you know, you didn't do it well. It's not a big deal, but let's make a joke about it.
So that might not even be sarcasm. It's just like a little connection, dad-son jab, you know?
Maybe.
When I get with old friends like from New Jersey, I slip right into an old sarcastic like way of speaking. And I kind of have to, I get home and I see myself using it with my husband. I'm like, whoa, shake it off. Like,
I just picture that movie, A League of Their Own. And John Lovitz is on like the platform with they're about to go off to, you know, join the club. And he's like, see, the way it works is the train moves, not the station. And that's what I picture in my sarcasm every time. Because the girl like looked confused about getting on the train or whatever. And he was saying the train moves, not the station. And like, that's the kind of thing I do with my kids, I think.
That's funny. That's a good one.
Well, I know sarcasm is definite, like the main form of communication with a lot of the guys in my life. Definitely in my recovery circle, it's very sarcastic and jokey and sort of put down-ish. And what's weird is I try not to do that a lot. Like, there are opportunities I take my jabs and make my jokes, but it's definitely something I'm like, oh, doesn't always feel good.
Yeah, that's the observed part. And then there's always the debate about white lies. Like, what if you're white lying?
Oh, we decided that was fine. You missed it.
Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Yeah.
We're good with it.
All right. Well, the Buddha would say rigid honesty. But when it comes to white lies, if it's like just do the lesser of two evils. Like if telling your wife she didn't look nice, I'm like, how do I look? And you're like, ugh, like the lesser of, if you tell her, yeah, you look great, babe, it's because otherwise you're going to make her feel terrible. Like if you, so.
Your Cheeto binge is showing.
So, pick the less, if you can't tell the truth, at least pick the lesser of the two that will cause harm.
So that's probably where we came with the white lies. That's kind of was the idea behind why we thought, maybe it's not.
Right.
Maybe rigid honesty isn't the way, because if it's going to be more hurtful and less helpful in that moment to tell someone like a hard truth. I think the example they used was someone like going on stage for a speech, and do you want to tell them right before they walk out there? Like, that's a terrible speech. Like, you don't want to do that because then it just kills their confidence, and then they're going to walk out there and really bomb. So you just say, oh, it's great. Go get them.
Mm-hmm. You're going to be awesome. Yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of my wrap up. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Just set your intention, practice the best you can, and observe how it goes and see if you can do even better next time. Questions?
Interestingly, like I pictured before you taught us about wise speech that like the idea would have been more in line with what we came up with in our honesty conversation. Like this, we came up with the idea that this, well, we didn't come up with it, but we were reading about this idea that honesty is a virtue, and virtues, according to, old Greek philosophers, aren't necessarily supposed to be one end or the other of the spectrum. It's not like always lie or always be honest. Virtues are supposed to have a balance between 2 points. And like going through the question list we did on our quiz, on our honesty episode, it was a lot about this idea of like, no, I should probably not be honest with my wife when she asked if she looks fat lately. I should probably not, tell my new mother-in-law that the sweater she just got me as a gift is hideous. I should probably not tell people their speech sucks when they don't have time to change it. Like, and I think there was a lot of concepts in there that led me to believe that was probably wise speech. Like, let me really think through my intentions here. Is what I'm saying going to be useful or helpful to this person? And let me really, this idea of thoughtful speech, like what result am I going to produce? Where I feel like you introduced it and it kind of follows that concept, but it also, the Buddha's idea of like honesty at all times sort of, I don't know, it doesn't sit as well with me as I think just thoughtful speech does in general.
Well, if the goal is enlightenment, rigid honesty is necessary. But he also talked about the middle way, finding that middle path, like that virtue scale you were just talking about.
Yeah, that's kind of what we thought of when we were doing it. We were like, oh, this is very Buddhist-y. It's very middle path. But if he was like, always be honest, I don't know. Maybe people didn't ask him hard questions.
Yeah. Well, did they say anything in there about or is there any conversation around confrontational speech? I mean, because you're going to have situations where you have a strong viewpoint that is worthwhile. Say it is a conversation with someone that matters about access to treatment or whatever around recovery, and you're passionate about that, and it's something that you want to advocate for.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, and you're going to meet controversial opinions on that. Is there any, how to handle those things?
The guidance, I think, is the same. Like, you want to do it, it sounds like timing's important. You want to be honest and kind and respectful, and do it to the best benefit of all parties involved. So I think the guidance is still, it's just trickier. It's just a lot trickier.
Well, I think it is important for me, too, to try to look at my intentions and things a lot at the base. Like, what is my intention here? Do I think I want to change this person's mind? Do I think I'm going to make them think the way I want them to think? If that's my intention, that's probably not so great, because then I'm going to get argumentative and defensive, and it's going to turn into a battle. Versus maybe I'm just going to try to open their mind a little bit and give them some information to think about, and maybe look at this a little differently. Like, that is a more helpful way of approaching those conversations for me.
Yeah. Any other examples of unwise speech lately?
No, none I can think of. I think for me, I mean, I love the idea of wise speech. I don't know that 12-step necessarily has an equivalent. I feel like we just go in and we're like, honesty. That's the speech
The
you
end.
need. Honest speech.
Honest, open, and willing.
And I guess my take on this, which Buddha would agree with, because he says everybody should find their own path and not just blindly believe in his. Right? Isn't that what his thing is? Everybody should get their own
be
sense
a lamp
of...
unto yourself.
Yeah. So my take on wise speech is that I need to put more thought into the intention ahead of time. Like, what is the goal? Because I don't necessarily, and I don't think most people do. I think we just talk. Like, we're just programmed. We're these computers. We spit out these statements when things come up, and that's what happens, right? People give us a 1, we give them back a 0, and that's just a programming thing we have. And I think slowing down, thinking about what are my actual goal with what I'm saying. Am I trying to make them feel bad? Am I trying to make them feel like they have room for improvement? Am I trying to like subtly, suggest a different behavior for them that might work better for them in their life? Like, what is the actual goal? And then knowing that, I think I can speak from a wiser place. So yeah, I think the wise intention idea is cool. And my wise speech version is not necessarily based around dishonesty. It's not like I'm trying to lie, but it's more like, how do I get where I'm going in the most compassionate and kind way possible?
And maybe that's the thing with 12-step fellowships, why we don't see, or why after a period of time people drift away or maybe find other avenues of spiritual growth. So a lot of us, me included, come into recovery with no understanding of, honesty. Like, we think we know what it is, but we're not living honestly. We're not doing it. So we learn about that like in basic steps. So you can't try to describe to someone who's never been living honesty all the subtleties, of when it's okay to be honest and when it's not. You just be like, look, just be honest, okay? Just right. Be honest. If you can do that for a little while, the subtleties will come like in some time with some practice.
We'll figure out where that doesn't work well.
And so we come into recovery and we learn these basic foundational principles or virtues, maybe is a better way to think of it. And as we develop, we might have to look at some other avenues of spiritual growth or virtue growth, because we can't rely on just those basic principles anymore.
I took such offense to it when my therapist ages ago told me that, like, the basic 12-step groups, the NAs, the AAs, she's like, yeah, they're like elementary school. And I was like, fuck you.
Right.
It's everything.
Because I was thriving.
Right. And I gotta say, and this isn't like a put down, I'm not trying to make anybody feel like they're less than or any of that, but it does, from my outside exploration, seem a lot like that. Like, kind of like you just laid out. Like, they give us these basic general concepts, and then maybe if you move into some of these other 12-step fellowships, they get a little more refined in those ideas. Maybe that's middle or high school. And then, there's another world outside of that of like internal growth that you can seek through other spiritual paths or therapy or some other way that is like the graduate school of.
Yeah. Well, see, and I agree with you 100%. My bang on the table thing with that is, but if people would stick around, we could bring some of that into the people that have been around. Like, if everybody who wants to get further spiritual growth goes somewhere else, then we never evolve past elementary school. Like, that's all we ever are is elementary school, because every time people get along the way, they're like, I'm going somewhere else.
But I think that's actually not how it would work. And I think it's actually designed
to the detriment of the new people.
Right.
It would be like Billy Madison putting an adult into the.
Well, and it would be this idea of like, kind of like AA's pamphlet says, don't talk about other things besides alcohol in here, or the alcoholic might not get it when he walks in the door. Like, if we were talking in our meetings and our fellowship about all these, more refined concepts, the guy who just wants to stop shooting heroin is going to be like, this isn't the place for me. I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about anymore. So.
That's where the wise speech comes in. See, I'm going to know when it's the new guy, that conversation is a different conversation than I'm going to have with the guy at 10 years or going to have with the guy at 20 years.
Who has the time,
those
though?
Are different conversations.
But, if they're working like their graduate school program, they don't have time to go back to volunteer at the elementary school.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see it working, honestly. Because, if I go in and share, if they're like, hey, come share your experience, strength, and hope, I'm going to talk about what's going on for me now. And there's not I'm not going to say there's not. There's very few meetings that don't have a new person there. So I'm just never going to be at the same place they're at.
Oh, that's true. But what I think of is there were times in meetings where I heard people say things, And it was like, whatever. And now that I've been there for a while, I'm like, oh, I see what they were talking about. You know, like from staying around now, those things make more sense.
Maybe. I don't know.
But I understand why people, I understand why people sort of end up venturing to other places or going other avenues, because it is hard. I mean, most of what you're going to hear is.
Well, and there's a reason that people going for their doctorate don't go sit in a third grade class, and we don't have second graders in doctor's school with them. Like, there's a separation for a purpose. Like, they're just in two different places. They wouldn't benefit from being in the same place, I don't think.
Never mind. I won't even go down that road. That's why our educational system's fucked, because we don't have smart people teaching the dumb people what they need to know. We have somebody who doesn't know anything teaching somebody else who doesn't know anything. But
maybe.
I'll join in that conversation.
Isn't there a thing about if you're what you know, you learn teaching or something like some concept of that? You learn it better by teaching than.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Anyway, that's why my kids go to hippie school.
All right. So take your wise speech, take your wise intentions, go out there and think about what you're saying. Stop just responding immediately to everyone. You know, that reactionary response that we have based in, you know, our nervous system. We talked about that a little bit, or our feelings, or, you know, let's actually think through this to the heart of the matter and come from there. Have a good week.
Bye.
Did you like this episode? Share it with people you think might get something out of it. Check out the rest of our episodes at recoverysortof.com. Also, while you're there, you can find ways to link up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, anything. We're always looking for new ideas. Got an idea you want us to look into? Reach out to us.